So another programming problem I wanted to talk about is one from your homework. So I assigned you 5.2. You're simply just putting 5.1 into a loop. But let's go ahead and read this. Write a program that reads an integer value from the user representing a year. The purpose of the program is to determine if the year is a leap year and therefore has 29 days in February in the Gregorian calendar. A year is a leap year if it is divisible by 4, unless it's divisible by 100, but not 400. For example, the year 2003 is not a leap year, but the year 2004 is. The year 1900 is not a leap year because it's divisible by 100, but the year 2000 is a leap year because even though it's divisible by 100, it is also divisible by 400. Produce an error message for any input that is less than 1582, the year the Gregorian calendar was adopted. One thing to note is that a year divisible by 4 does not mean that it's a leap year, because if that year is divisible by 100 but not 400, that means it's not a leap year. So you have to keep that in mind. So there's actually multiple conditions that we need to check whenever we read in the year from the user. So I created this program that's going to be my guide in setting up the leap year. I'm not going to finish this for you because this is your homework. I do have additional instructions in the homework where I want you to use a static method to help assist in creating this program. But here are all the directions that I just grabbed from the instructions. So I put in here what a leap year is because I think it's important to note that a leap year is divisible by 4 but not 100. It's divisible by 4 and 100 and 400. So those are the conditions for a leap year. So I went ahead and set up my scanner class, an integer for the year. I prompt the user for the year, and then I store the year. So let's go ahead and set up some of these conditions. The first condition that we can set is if the year is above 1582. So 1582 is okay, but anything less than 1582 is not okay. So I set up my first check. The first check is to see if the year is greater than 1582. If it's not, then I print out this message. We can test this, but I'm going to assume that's going to work. I want to move on to the next check. So the next check that I need to do is figure if the year is divisible by 4. If the year is not divisible by 4, then immediately we know it's not a leap year. But if it is divisible by 4, then we got to make sure that it's not divisible by 100. But if it is divisible by 100, then we need to make sure that it's divisible by 400. My best advice is to take one thing at a time. Don't let this overwhelm you. So the one thing that I want to check first is I want to check to see if the year is divisible by 4. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So here's the additional check that I'm doing. I went ahead and nested this inside of this if statement right here. So after I check that it's greater than 1582 or greater than equal to 1582, then I check to see if it's divisible by 4. If it is divisible by 4, then it might be leap year, but there's some additional checks that I need to do. If it's not divisible by 4, then that means it's definitely not a leap year, and I can go ahead and print out that the year is not a leap year. So I need to go ahead and keep working on this year. So the next thing I need to check is if the year is divisible by 100. If it's not divisible by 100, then it is a leap year. But if it is divisible by 100, then I need to check to see if it's divisible by 400. But let's go ahead and set up the check to see if it's divisible by 100. So here's an additional check that I'm doing. So this is nested inside of my check to see if it's divisible by 4. So now I have multiple nested if statements. This is kind of getting harder to manage, but if it makes it easier for you to break it down, then I recommend doing it this way. Where you first check to see if it's greater than 1582. Then you check to see if it's divisible by 4. Then you check to see if it's divisible by 100. Now, if it's not divisible by 100, then we know for sure that it's a leap year. But if it is divisible by 100, then we need to check to see if it's divisible by 400. If it is divisible by 400, then it is a leap year. If it's not divisible by 400, it is not a leap year. So here's the last check that I do. So the check that I'm doing is I'm checking to see if it's divisible by 400. So if you're divisible by 100 and 400, that means you are a leap year. But if you're not divisible by 400 and you're divisible by 104, then that means that you're not a leap year because you're divisible by 100, but not 400. I know that seems weird, but that is the conditions that were in the program. So those are the conditions that I implemented. Now we need to actually test to see if this works. So if this works correctly, then 1900 will not be a leap year. Neither will 2003, 2004 will be leap year, and 2000 will be leap year. So let's go ahead and compile and run this program and verify that this works. So my first check, I want to check to see if my 100 checks are working. So I'm going to go ahead and enter in 1900. Now 1900 is divisible by 4. It's also divisible by 100, but it's not divisible by 400. So this should not be a leap year. And my output says that 1900 is not a leap year. Now I want to check 2000. So 2000 is divisible by 4, is divisible by 100, and also divisible by 400. So this should be a leap year. And it is. Now I'm going to check 2003. 2003 is not divisible by 4, so this should not be a leap year. I want to check 2004. 2004 is a leap year because it's divisible by 4 and not divisible by 100. The last thing I want to check is I want to go outside of my range. So I'm going to enter in a year less than 1582 and I get my error. So here's all the logic that I implemented. It's checking if it's a leap year. Now there is a lot here and it is getting kind of messy. Now you can actually use logical operators to make one big if condition check instead of doing all of this. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what that looks like. I'm going to take my code and move it over to a different program. And then we can go ahead and massage this so that we're not using all these different checks. All right, so I created a new file called leap year 2. And I basically just have the exact same code that I had before. So I want to go ahead and combine some of these different checks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start within my most inner nested if statements. I'm going to kind of move that to its parent. So now I'm saying you're a leap year if you're divisible by 4 and you're not divisible by 100. So this is going to return true. Then you're a leap year. But if you are divisible by 100, then I'm going to check to see, well, are you divisible by 400? If you are, then you're going to be leap year still. Any other case, you won't be a leap year. So let's go ahead and compile and run this program and make sure that our results still work. So first check, the one I want to check the most is 1900. It's still telling me that 1900 is not a leap year. Next check is 2000. It's telling me that 2000 is a leap year. Next check, 2003, not a leap year. And then 2004. And there you go. So this actually works the same as what I had before. I was able just to combine all my checks into one big Boolean expression. But you need to do whatever you feel comfortable with. Making this huge Boolean expression, if you're okay with doing this, then I recommend doing it. But if you think it's too much, you rather take like a step-by-step approach, then it's okay to have nested if statements so they can make it easier for you to determine what path you want to take.